So the evening is a milestone, not just for the number of years that we've been gathering in this space, but also because the print issue that we're launching tonight, which is over here on this table for sale and looks gorgeous, this issue is something that the Common has never done before. And so we've taken this sense of place lens, focus, and focus it on a particular language spanning multiple countries. And so issue 11 is devoted entirely to contemporary Arabic fiction. 26 authors from 15 countries brought into English by 18 translators. We have 2 expert introductions and artwork by 5 Arabic artists. Please take a look at their work. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. So the genesis of this issue stretches back to 2012, when I spent some time, about a year in Abu Dhabi. And I went with very little knowledge of Arabic literature, particularly contemporary authors. And so selfishly, I wanted to use the Common as an opportunity to learn and to find stories, and then to be able to bring them back to a readership here that I thought was very likely like me and didn't have much exposure to these stories. And over the last many years, as some of you know, I have developed a really excellent track record for taking on massively complicated projects with a lot of naivete. And this issue really takes the cake in that respect. So it was, if it was the most intricate and challenging issue in some ways, it has also been the most rewarding. And absolutely necessary for this issue to come together was working with an astute and accomplished and energetic co-editor. And so I was very fortunate early on to partner with Hisham Bustani, who is a Jordanian writer, and his contacts and enthusiasm are complemented by considerable patience and a very keen eye. So he can't be here tonight to join us. He will be launching the issue at the end of the month in Amman, in Jordan. So if any of you are nearby, you should go, because that is going to be a great event. And some of the authors will actually be there. So tonight, we're giving voice to those authors, to people who can't be here tonight. And a particular shout out to the translators who worked so hard on this issue. Of course, without them, our reading would be much more impoverished. So they're real labors of love in this issue, and I've learned an incredible amount from working with these translators and the authors, of course. And I know that there will be so much in this issue that all of you will enjoy as well. And I think, we can come to works in translation with an idea that they're sort of like vegetables, and we consume them because they're good for us. They broaden our horizons in some educational way. And I just want to say that these stories are not good for you. But they are really pleasurable. So they are pleasures in the form of terrifying whirlwinds, of comic satire, of lyric glimpses of everyday men and women, and they're completely entrancing on their own terms. And I was never bored reading these stories, and I often thought that I had never read anything like this before, so that was incredibly exciting. And one thing that these pieces taught me was how places, which the Common is devoted to a sense of place, but how places can really come alive through internal landscapes, dreams and fables and memories, which a lot of these stories make excellent use of. So tonight you will hear 3 very brief excerpts, and our readers will repeat the names and titles of the stories. The first one is by Malika Mustadrov, who's a Moroccan writer. And Omar Barada will read from her short story called Just Different, and that's translated by Alice Guthrie. And Omar is a writer and a translator, the director of a library and an artist residency in Marrakesh. And previously, he has hosted programs at the Center Pompidou and curated the Tangier International Book Salon. Our second reading will be by Öykü Tekten, and she will read from a Bouquet, which is a short story by an Emirati writer named Fatima Al-Mazrouei, translated by Catherine Halls. And this is a story that gives voice to a married woman's sort of simmering and haunting rage, which should be fun. And Öykü is a poet, a translator, and a PhD candidate at the CUNY Graduate Center. And our last reader will be Hadi Eldebek, who will read Hassan al-Mazza's Al-Shaghouri's Last Victory, translated by Maya Tabit. It's a very short piece by Zakaria Tamer, who at 85 is one of the Arab world's most celebrated fiction writers. So it's really an honor to be able to include him in this issue. Hadi is an Oudist and a composer from Lebanon, based in New York City. And he's taught and performed widely in ensembles, including Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble, the Brooklyn Philharmonic, and the Brooklyn Nomads. So as you'll see, the pieces that we're going to hear may be a little bit on the dark side. It's a reflection of what Egyptian author Youssef Raka calls in his introduction, a reflection of the increasingly complicated and dangerous business of living in this part of the world. But the issue is certainly not monochromatic. In this darkness, there's humor, and there's hope and understanding, anger and love, and all in language that is startling and fresh. So we really hope you'll bring the issue home with you and experience more extraordinary moments like the ones we're about to hear. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I will read from a piece by Malika Mustadraf, as Jen said, who's actually the only dead author of this issue, which is devoted to new Arabic writing, which doesn't mean she's from an older generation, because she would have been just 50 years old now, had she not died 10 years ago of a rare disease. And she left only 2 books, a short story collection and a novella, which are out of print, hard to find, and very little known outside of Morocco. So I really am happy. I commend the eye of Hisham Bustani and Jennifer Acker, who decided to include her here. She wrote a lot of and from the underbelly of Casablanca in a kind of stark, raw, and direct style, and themes that had mainly been explored by male authors before her. And so the following piece has been translated into English by Alice Guthrie. And a note to the editors in the room, I know that Alice is interested in translating more Mustadraf. So مجرد اختلاف. ساعتان وأنا أقطع الشارع جيئة وذهابا ولا زبون واحد. الجفاف. أتحسس شرفة الحلاقة في جيبي، أحتفظ بها دائما تحسبا لأية حركة غدر قد يفاجئني بها أحدهم. بوشتا يقف قرب مارشي سنترال مستندا إلى الحائط، يغني أغنيته المفضلة بصوت ذي بحة ناشزة. الروج الروج أو الروج ما أحلى سكراتك يا أمي. صوته الخشن يجرح سكون الليل، ينتظر أن يأخذ نصيبه على كل عملية مقدما. نحن نعرق ونجف ونتحمل سماجة الزبائن وهو يأكلها باردة وجدة. الله ينعل دين. I've been pacing back and forth along the street for 2 hours now, and there hasn't been a single customer. It's a drought. I touch the razor blade in my pocket, checking it's still there. I always keep it on me in case someone suddenly does something dodgy, in case I get cornered. Bouchta stands near Marché Central, leaning on a wall and singing his favorite song in a tuneless croak. red wine, ah, red wine. محلى سكرات وأمي. His coarse voice rips through the still night. He's waiting to take his cut. We sweat and stress and bear the repulsive customers. And he doesn't have to lift a finger. Fuck him. Naima found a client earlier on. Went off on the back of his motorbike. He seemed like a worker from one of the factories. She said, I'm a fan of the working classes. They're better than those inexperienced little pupils you're obliged to teach the ABCs of love. I'm not some special learning car covered in L plates for them to grind around in again and again. The heel of my shoe is hurting me. I can't stand on it for very long at a time. I'd like to go home, drink a little beer, and eat a plate of mussels with hot pepper. That's the best prescription for warming a person up in this cold weather. But Bushta won't leave me alone. Plus, I've got so many expenses: food, clothes, transport, rent. Rent's the main thing. I pay my share of the room I rent with Naima and Scummy. I'm thinking about moving out and living alone. I can't bear Scummy anymore. She only needs a couple of drinks and she's off, scandalizing us in the street, making a scene. She flips into this weird, delirious state. She rants, she says all these totally irrational things, and she insults everyone and everything in foul language. Things get even more awful if she crosses paths with any other drunks. The razor blade's still in my hand. I've been practicing using it ever since I got attacked by those bearded guys who said they wanted to clean up society. Since then, I've hated anyone with a beard. They shaved my head. Bushta behaved atrociously. He ran away and left them to it. If the police patrol car hadn't come by, something worse would have happened for sure. It's made me like the police for the first time in my life. I'd always run from them, but that day I ran toward them, and I'm always pleased to see them nowadays. But the loss of my hair still pains me. My mother always used to love brushing it, and she deliberately let it grow long, right down past my shoulders. One time my father came back from one of his long trips. He'd go away for months on end, then come back with presents for us, and cheese and tea, and lots of problems. This particular time he turned up and caught my mum putting lipstick on my cheeks as rouge, my hair pinned up in a bun. He beat her that day till she soiled herself and told her, "You're going to ruin this boy. He'll turn into a girl." Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to read an excerpt from Fatima Al-Mazrouei's short story called Bouquet. This piece is translated by Catherine Halls. Fatima Al-Mazrouei is a prize-winning Emirati writer of novels, short stories, poems, plays, and stories for children. She works at the National Archives of the United Arab Emirates. I talk a lot. It is the quality you know me by, not just you, but my neighbors and the people on my street. Come closer. Don't move away, and don't cover your ears, because talking comes instinctively to me, and I get no relief from my exasperation or sadness unless I talk to you. Come closer. Don't sit so far away. The day I told you I was going to leave you, you laughed, and I saw in your eyes a confidence I can never erase from my memory. You were confident I would never do it because I'm weak before you. But I will conquer that weakness and attempt to forget the memories I have with you. Like a sleepwalker, I left your house. All I remember is that I hurriedly collected my stuff and ran. And now here I am today, boarding my flight without your knowledge, with a picture of my daughter in my bag, a picture of her and me together next to my passport. I won't bother asking you to pay back the money I lent you, or to give me the birthday present you forgot because you have been too busy with other things lately to think about me. I won't ask you for anything at all. Are you asking me to keep silent? To not talk? Both concepts in your mind hold the same meaning. But when have you ever been interested in meanings or words or concepts? Life to you is a deal where you always want to come out on top. So now I'm leaving. I can't take this feeling of disgust at your constant betrayal anymore. Can't stand the smell which bores into my body and burns my flesh and shatters my bones every time the idiotic fate of the marital bed brings us together. Didn't you love my moans? I used to moan so as to shield you from your sexual weakness. I tolerated your huge body on my chest and my stomach, my mind elsewhere, thinking back to another point in time. There with the little chairs and the blackboard, the blue and white pinafore, and the anemone red rucksack, and his smiling face as he waved at me when the school bus passed his tiny bicycle. He would always wave and cycle alongside the bus with his books on his back. There's a lump in my throat that's stopping me talking, a lump the size of the question that has so often kept me awake at night. What made me want to live with you, made us want to live together and have a child? You knew I was addicted to the scent of men, to their bodies. You knew how I went wild for those tough, manly movie stars. I would practically melt in front of the TV. What a difference there was between my fantasy and reality. That's all over now. Read my lips. Read them well. Because after this, I won't be able to talk or even pronounce a single letter. Don't bother looking for me. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to wear short skirts and get a new fashionable haircut like a model. I knew you had a thing for models' bodies from that video I found one evening in your wardrobe under a pile of your boxers. And I knew that after leaving me to go to bed alone, you used to go into your study to watch films where body and fantasy were laid bare. Claiming you were catching up on work or taking a look at the news, I, meanwhile, would lie in bed, painfully sensing in my body what life had deprived me of, to the point I was nearly convinced that my flat chest and dull features repulse you. At least that relieved you of having to face up to your own impotence. Don't worry. I am not so cheap as to tell anyone that you're an opposition activist. Secretly, perhaps you want me to, or fantasize that I will, because I know you love to see yourself as a hero. Look at you, reveling in your power and in the feigned honor of political dissidents. It might not be long until they find you out, pull you down, until you're torn from your life of deceitful luxury and tossed behind bars. Do I want that? I don't care. All I can think about now is leaving my country because of you. Yet the world is so huge, much bigger than your illusions of strength, bigger than the plague that is you, bigger than the pain that rose through my cells because of you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good? I'm going to be reading an excerpt from Zakaria Tamer's story, Hassan Al-Shaghouri's Last Victory. It was translated by Maya Tabit, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Zakaria Tamer, who is a Syrian author who has published 11 short story collections, 2 collections of satirical articles, and many children's books. He is the recipient of many prizes, including the Mahmoud Darwish Award for Literature. لم يرتكب حسن المزاز الشاغوري أي جريمة من الجرائم الشائعة، فهو لم يقتل ولم يسرق ولم يغتصب قاصرات ولم ينتسب إلى حزب معارض أو حزب مؤيد، ولم يدخل يوما مخفرا للشرطة أو سجنا أو محكمة، ولم يدخن في أمكنة محظور فيها التدخين، ولو سئل عن اسم الرئيس الحالي لبلده لما عرفه، ولو امتلك سيف خالد بن الوليد لما استخدمه إلا في تقشير البرتقال وتقطيع البطيخ الأحمر. ولكن السلطات الأمنية اليقظة التي تعلم ما هو غير معلوم أقدمت على اعتقاله وسجنته 9 سنوات من دون أن توجه إليه تهمة محددة. وفي مستهل السنة 10 اقتيد إلى قاعة إحدى المحاكم ليمثل أمام قاضية. Hassan al-Mazaz al-Shaghouri had never committed an ordinary everyday crime. He had not killed or robbed anyone, had never raped underage girls, had not joined a party whether pro or anti-government, and not once had he set foot in a police station, jail, or court of law. He did not smoke in places where smoking was banned, could not name the current president if asked, and would have had no use for the sword of Khalid ibn al-Walid himself other than to peel an orange and cut open a watermelon. Nevertheless, the vigilant security apparatus that knew the unknowable saw fit to detain him and jail him for 9 years without charge, until sometime in the 10th year of his detention, he was led into a court of law to appear before a judge. Head lowered, he stood to attention, stealing sideways glances at the judge, who sat engrossed in a book about Italian pizza while repeatedly blowing her nose into white paper tissues. Hassan was stunned. Wasn't she his old neighbor? The one who had been notorious for her love of money and her lust for young men, for the easy credit terms she offered, and for her devotion to numerous husbands and lovers? Pointing at her, Hassan al-Mazaz al-Shaghouri was on the verge of saying something about the judge, but the guard stopped him. Shh. The world has changed, he said. It's different now. Those once below are now above you. The judge closed her book shut and readied herself to speak. A fearful silence reigned over the room as she addressed Hassan al-Mazaz al-Shaghouri. She told him he was being released immediately. He had been found undeserving of his citizenship, she said brusquely, and it had been withdrawn as a result. He was therefore unentitled to remain in any of the country's prisons. God's earth is vast, Hassan al-Mazaz al-Shaghouri told the judge in a solemn voice, and he and his wife and children would go someplace as soon as he was able to sell his house. But the judge informed him that the house no longer belonged to him following its sale at auction by the Tax Revenue Authority to collect his unpaid taxes and the attending penalties. Hassan al-Mazaz al-Shaghouri replied with levity that the house was old, it was unbearably depressing. It had witnessed the birth and death of all 4 of his grandparents as well as his father, and the thought of dying there was not in the least attractive to him. Whereupon the judge notified him that his wife was no longer his legally wedded spouse, and that divorce proceedings had been initiated shortly after his arrest. To which news, Hassan al-Mazza al-Shaghouri responded by saying that were he a woman, he would have ululated with joy. His wife, having lost whatever beauty she has once possessed and become a coarse-tongued gossip that he would have long ago divorced had it not been for the children. The judge now informed him that his children too were no longer his, having been put up for adoption and taken on by childless women years ago. His children were rowdy and quarrelsome, Hassan al-Mazza al-Shaghouri told the judge, and farming them out for adoption was the best thing that could have happened, as his heart had practically given out trying to fill the bottomless pits they had for bellies. His heart was also no longer his, the judge further informed him. He had donated it for an organ transplant, to which Hassan al-Mazza al-Shaghouri replied that he welcomed being rid of that which brought little besides pain and suffering, and then begged the judge to also consider the donation of his stomach, an offer that was accepted on the spot. The judge now ordered him to lie on the ground and for a pillow to be placed under his head, orders that were immediately executed, whereupon his guards and herds collaborated with each other on the extraction of his stomach, his heart, his kidneys, and his liver, following which, to the judge's great surprise, a bloodied Hassan al-Mazza al-Shaghouri stood up and beseeched her to let him go so that he might reach the border before nightfall. Although he appeared alive, the judge deemed him dead and refused his request as the guards carried him away and laid him down to rest inside a narrow hole in the ground which they covered with cement, while he carried on extolling the compassion of his neighbor, the judge, who by now appeared to have forgotten the deportation order she had issued and allowed him to remain within the bowels of the earth, enjoying a safe and a peaceful life.